This week on Arts Insight, we enter the world of large-scale art.
They wanted that to be tile, but it was about 60 feet. It was a lot of tiles.
Relive the explosion of Beatlemania.
We have John Lennon's original tiny little round glasses that he's famous for. Later on, he purchased a larger pair that he's famous for wearing in all his solo albums and later on in his career.
The realities of life through the eyes of one photographer.
I'm really fascinated by these people's lives. I'm realizing in the process of this research how little I know of this moment in history.
And we get a look inside the world of bookbinding heirlooms.
It's like a piece of old furniture that is now restored and you can display it in your house.
I'm Ernie Manous, and it's time to get Arts Insight. Welcome to Arts Insight. Today, we're visiting Box 13, an artist-run innovative environment whose sole purpose is the creation and advancement of experimental contemporary art. We'll take a look around in just a minute. But first, artist Suzanne Sellers never let the size and scope of her dreams limit her or her art, so she brings them to life in large-scale murals.
My art is unique because it comes from me. It's a personal endeavor. It's a personal way to self-express. It speaks a language that kind of overrides any social, economic, racial, educational barrier. It enables you to integrate your mind, your body, and your spirit together in one activity. I'm Suzanne Elizabeth Sellers, and I'm an artist. I became interested in art from an early age. I grew up in the southeast part of Houston in a large Italian Catholic family. I can't ever remember a time when I wasn't creating something, whether it was painting, drawing, and that's just who I was. It's who I was then, it's who I am today. My own personal work, I work in acrylics, and when I do public murals, I work on large scale, either using paint or tile work. A muralist is someone who paints on a wall, and that wall can be small, it can be interior, it can be exterior, it can be in the form of contemporary or realistic, whatever you choose it to be. When I did the Chase Bank mural, it was a 6-month project. From meeting with their team of people, from start to finish, it took me 6 months. That was a parking lot, and they were going to make that into kind of a park setting. They thought a mural would be a very good idea there. And we decided the best thing to go in that particular area was maybe a reflection of the history of Houston. It was just a fantastic and exciting and just very, very challenging opportunity. It was wonderful. Some of my murals are in a style called trompe-l'oeil, which is a French term meaning trick the eye. Basically, it's a matter of just creating an illusion of windows and doors and architectural facades. You really have to learn to work with just lights and darks, because that's all it is. It's just an illusion, trying to trick someone into seeing what is not really there. The tile mural I completed for it was the Houston Fire Department. They wanted that to be tile, but it was about 60 feet by 16 foot tall, so that was a lot of tiles. And it took more organizational skills than I thought I ever encompassed. Found some photos that represented that particular Denver Harbor community, worked with the fire department, and just tried to collage a series of images that represented the neighborhood as well as what the fire department did. And then it was just a process of firing about 4,000 tiles and getting them up there on that wall. It is a challenge, artistically and just physically, to complete something on that scale. When you do a mural such as the ones I completed for the Children's Assessment Center, you have to realize that you have an entirely different audience. You have mostly children. You have mostly parents who are maybe in distress, or it's not a great place for them to be. And my murals are more whimsical, more colorful, more images that they can relate to and make them feel comfortable in an uncomfortable situation. When I'm doing a small scale work, what I do is I go out and I just search for maybe an inspiration. I may put it on the computer and edit it and just find the perfect way that I want to see it. Then I come to the canvas and begin to draw it out, usually with charcoal, and kind of loosely block it in maybe with color. And that's when I start to fragment it, and then it slowly begins to focus and to take shape. My environment inspires my designs. I just look at everything that I see. The way the sunlight hits the trunk of a tree, or if I'm going downtown, I love the way the light may play against the buildings, or I see on a construction worker's helmet. Every artist brings something unique to their own artist because they take from their own experiences, their travels, their location, their history. As an artist, I've evolved into becoming more willing to take risks. I'm bolder, I'm brighter, I'm more confident, and I think that shows in my work.
To find out more, visit SuzanneSellers.com. Today, we're living in a box, the Box 13 art space filled with studios and art spaces for the display and creation of contemporary art. And to tell us more about this unique location is artist member Emily Link. Hello, Emily.
Hey, how's it going?
First of all, cool building.
Thanks.
It was an old sewing machine factory?
Yeah, it used to be an old sewing machine factory and showroom. It's from the 1940s.
But it's still a showroom today, but now for contemporary art.
That is true.
Why is it important for our community to have this?
At Box 13, we provide affordable studio spaces for artists, and we're 100% artist run. So it gives a lot of artists in the community an opportunity to have a studio space for cheap, and also help run the organization and an opportunity to show their own work in the galleries.
One thing we never really talk about on this show, why is it important for an artist to have a studio space to work in?
I think it's nice to have a dedicated space away from home where you can just go in and like focus on just your work, not have the distractions from outside. I know it's helpful for me, that's why I first moved here from school. Yeah.
What about the collaborative effort, being in a building where there are other artists? Do you feed off each other? Is there a nurturing that comes from working with other artists?
Yes, for sure. We meet about like once a month, like all as a group, but everybody kind of has their own schedule and comes and goes. But we've had a lot of projects in the past where we've all gotten the chance to work together. And it's just nice to have other people around. So like the studio here, instead of like at home where you can like ask your neighbor, like if you're having a problem with something and they can help work it out with you.
Now, we did start off by saying it's not only just the studios, it's also a place to exhibit the artwork. What are we seeing in here today?
So the work in this space is by two artists, Barry Whitaker and Michael Bernhardt, and they go by Barkle. I think we combine the two. So Barry is from Ohio and Michael is from Denver, and so they're like a collaborative, like long distance collaborative, and they're playing a lot with ideas of like the signs that you kind of encounter every day. So like old logos, like fading billboards, social media, politics, and so they're kind of combining those into these signs that then they post around different locations and photograph them.
Ah, how cool. And these are the signs and those are the photographs.
Yeah.
Now, we also noticed when we were wandering around today, there are also classes that come over here.
Yeah, some of our artist members also teach. So having a studio here allows them to have like a space to bring them in and like show them like alternative processes.
And there are other galleries here also.
Yeah.
So what else is on display?
In our window box that you can see from the street, we have work by Dennis Nance. He creates costumes that he then wears and goes out into the public and interacts with people in them. He's going to be having a workshop on Halloween, so that'll be fun.
That will be.
And on the second floor, we have work by an artist named Michael Steven, and he works a lot with VHS tapes, and he's a big horror film fan. So he's investigating how horror kind of infiltrated the living room through the VHS, and he a lot of the pieces he'll take incinerated VHS tapes and then cast them into different objects.
Well, fascinating. To find out more about what goes on here, where can people visit?
Box13artspace.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
As you know, space and location often help us to interpret the art we see or hear. Take, for example, the Beatles. At History Miami, you can refresh your Floridian Beatlemania memory or experience the Fab Four and their Miami connection for the very first time. Here's a look.
This exhibition is produced by the Grammy Museum in Los Angeles, and it's really the impact of the Beatles' arrival in the United States. So, ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles, the title of the exhibition refers to the way that they were introduced at the Ed Sullivan Show. The Beatles first arrived in New York City in February 1964, and it was a great introduction to this incredible new style of music, new look at the future of music, really, in rock and roll. People were enamored already by the Beatles and when they arrived here, but people realized quickly their impact on music and the numbers of people that even showed up at the airports, at the concerts was overwhelming. I don't think anybody expected that. When the Beatles first arrived in the United States, in New York and in Miami, what you saw was an incredible outpour of fandom. You know, you see all the teen girls and boys all over the airport, hanging over the railings, pouring out of windows, trying to get a glimpse of the Beatles getting off the airplane and getting into their cars.
Knowing that the Beatles were coming, we knew Love, Love Me Do. My sister was totally in love with the Beatles, and so we heard all the songs, and when they came on and Ed Sullivan introduced them, she just screamed, along with everyone else in the studio audience during the whole performance, and that was it. And that was one of the great moments that one remembers.
When the Beatles arrived in New York for the first time, they were escorted into the Pan Am press room. So right here we're recreating what it felt like, what it looked like. You know, Pan Am was the major airway at the time, and most people flew into the United States through Pan American Airways. So here we have the press room with the microphones and their logos in the back. So I'm standing in front of a replica. We kind of recreated what the stage looked like at one of the Ed Sullivan Show concerts. It had these large arrows pointing to the stage, real simple setup. Interestingly enough, they didn't travel with their drums. The drums that you see on stage were made just for the United States tour. One of the interactives in the exhibition is a Ringo Starr-led tutorial drum set on a drum set. Put your headphones on and you'll have an electronic drum set, and he carries you through a few lessons on different rhythms that he uses and how to play a basic song. A few of the key pieces really in this exhibition include the jacket worn by Paul McCartney at Shea Stadium in 1965. The great thing is you look through these pieces, these artifacts, they're so personal. And some of them, you can tell how small, how tall they were. We have Ringo Starr's black coat that he wore in Abbey Road cover, and the famous cover when they're crossing the street. He's wearing that black jacket. We have John Lennon's original tiny little round glasses that he's famous for. These were too small, so these are the ones on the exhibit. Later on, he purchased a larger pair that he's famous for wearing in all his solo albums and later on in his career. Another great section we have in this exhibition is the memorabilia or the collectibles, the things that people gathered and found, and the likenesses of the Beatles that were reproduced on everything from shoes to lunch boxes to 45 record holders. Anything you can think of, we have 2 cases full of these items. Here we have the famous lock of hair collected from John Lennon. And it's signed by John Lennon, and he actually writes from the bald John Lennon. And it's a small lock of hair. It's given to a lucky fan at the show, and it has a ticket from 1963, August 1963. Good piece. We've reproduced a typical teen's bedroom. Unlike a fan's bedroom today for any musical group, back then it was covered and plastered with posters, their record collection, which is different than today from the digital player. So you see the records scattered across their desk, a board game based on the Beatles, and then scrapbooks and cutouts of all different magazines that a typical teen might have been cutting out to do a collage. And it's a great piece because everybody walks by there and it brings back memories of growing up in the 60s listening to the Beatles. A popular component of the exhibition is the oral history booth that we have set up. So you can come in and walk into a soundproof booth, and a display walks you through the steps to record your memories of the Beatles. So people can go in there and talk about the first time they heard a Beatles song, or the first time they heard them in concert, or their memories about the Beatles. And these are all recorded for posterity. The LA Museum, the Grammy Museum in LA will use these and provide them and make them available for people, for future generations. This exhibition not only covers the Beatles' impact and their musicianship here in the United States, it also covers their beginnings, their origins, starting in a small town, Liverpool, and also their influences. So you'll see some artifacts from Elvis Presley, you'll see Ray Charles' jacket, James Brown's clothing, stage outfits, and at first people say, well, so why are these things in the exhibition? And if you listen to their accounts of how they got started in music and the roots of their music, it's influenced by all these different artists. You take away from this exhibition is that when you walk through and you realize that the Beatles were so popular and they had an incredible tour schedule. Within 2 years, they toured 30 or 40 different places. These days, a band usually only does one concert a week. So that led really to their burnout. After 2.5 years of touring the United States, they didn't come back. A couple of the reasons they cited were too many fans. Too many people, they couldn't even hear themselves play. The technology was different back then, the speaker systems, the microphones, so they were on stage playing and half the time they couldn't even hear themselves. And all those things led them to start thinking about really how they wanted to approach their music. Eventually it led to different styles of music being played. So the Beatles, as a Fab Four, only lasted for 2.5 years.
To learn more of what's going on at History Miami, visit historymiami.org. Now, more than 65 years ago, acclaimed photographer Gordon Parks set out to shoot photos of life under segregation with some very personal stories. The series was supposed to run in Life magazine, but it never saw the light of day, until the Boston Museum of Fine Arts dug into their history.
It's always just been called young African-American couple in front of segregated movie theater. Didn't have a firm date. We didn't know anything about it.
This was the picture that launched the Museum of Fine Art's Karen Haas on a curatorial quest to learn what brought photographer Gordon Parks back to Fort Scott, Kansas, his hometown, in 1950. What she uncovered was a trove, a comprehensive look at black life under segregation.
He had the power to go back and tell the stories of African-American families, these friends of his, people who trusted him, who would look right into his camera and, really believed that he would do right by them, that he had this opportunity to sort of counter all the stereotypes of African-Americans.
This exhibition comprises the photographs Parks took on assignment for Life magazine. He had pitched the story, to return home to Kansas for an extremely personal take on segregation.
He decides to go back and seek out his classmates from elementary school, and it turns out it was the entire class of 1927 that he was looking for, so all the 11 classmates, and to look at where their lives had gone and what their experiences had been in the 20-plus years since he'd seen them.
It wasn't easy for Parks to return home. Kansas and Fort Scott had been rife with racism throughout his hardscrabble childhood.
He was the youngest of 15 children. His father was a tenant farmer. His mother was a maid. He described his life as having been discriminated against and really felt a need to get away.
As he tracked down his classmates some 20 years after he'd last seen them, he found that nearly all had moved away, some to Chicago's South Side.
He found one friend, Maisel, who was in very dire straits, and he described her as the class tragedy. She was living with an abusive husband who actually held up Gordon Parks with a gun and took all his money.
She was the exception. By and large, Parks found his classmates, like himself, had improved their lives.
Another one of the classmates had found a very good job at Campbell's Soup, which apparently was a factory that hired a lot of African-American workers. So some people were living very middle-class lives, but nearly all of the families that he met with were living in mostly African-American neighborhoods. And the sad part for me was that recently, in revisiting those neighborhoods and trying to find those homes to go back to the places to get a sense for myself of what they looked like, they're very changed today.
Haas retraced Parks' trip last year. Like Parks, her intent was personal too, and tinged with sadness for the homes no longer standing.
What had compelled you to go there?
I'm not sure, except to say that I really have become obsessed with this story. I feel as though these are people I've come to know through reading Gordon Parks's notes, reading his notebooks, going through his correspondence, looking through the contact sheets, studying the images. I'm really fascinated by these people's lives. I'm realizing in the process of this research how little I know of this moment in history.
And were it not for Haas, we wouldn't have seen this history. Life magazine never published the Parks story. Haas speculates it was bumped for breaking news, and by the time it could be published, the subjects' lives had already changed dramatically. So here, 65 years later, Parks' perspective finally sees the light of day.
One very exciting thing is that we've recently reproduced one of the images from the exhibition of a little girl playing the piano with her mother sitting next to her. And just out of the blue have been contacted by this little girl who turns out to be now in her late 60s, living in Arizona. A fascinating story, had wonderful conversation with her about her mother, about growing up in Chicago. And I'm thrilled to see that in many ways her life was exactly what her mother had hoped for her, and she went on to do many of the things her mother had not been able to do in her own life.
Progress through the lens of Gordon Parks.
To see more, visit mfa.org/exhibitions/Gordon Parks. And finally tonight, we take you inside the workshop of Beck & Orr, bookbinders who specialize in the repair and restoration of precious books, such as heirloom Bibles that have been passed down for generations.
Well, what in the heck is bookbinding? Beck & Orr is located here in the Westgate area, out on the hilltop. Well, we started at State and 3rd, is right there where the Hyatt on Capitol Square is. And that was the original place in 1888. And now we've been out here for the last 25 years. Our customers are anybody that needs to have thesis bound, old Bibles bound.
I'm gonna tell you what, this is old. To tell you the truth, it's really not in bad shape, except for the outside. I can't read German, so I don't know. Oh, 1765. So this one here has been around a while. And look at how they got that on the back. B-I-B-L-I-A.
We hand set and do everything by hand, which you don't hear about that too much in these days of changing ways. We still do the hand foil stamping the way we used to back in the old days. We hand set our type.
If you want to know the truth, it don't even look like this here goes to a Bible, but it says the Owl 1930. And when I opened it up, I said, well, here's the Holy Bible. And I've never really seen one like that. What I'm doing here is I'm taking getting the covers off of there and cleaning this here back all off of the old glue and so forth.
What we do hasn't changed that much. We're a hand bindery, and we sew all of our stuff so you don't have to worry about it falling apart. We'll salvage the spine if that's, if we can do that. We'll also save the front and back covers. If the spine is not salvageable, then what we'll do is take a piece of leather and fold it, bring it over, and stamp it, with Holy Bible, maybe the family name.
I'm going to finish cleaning this off. We'll re-glue it. We'll put a back on it. This here where it's loose here on the ends and so forth, I'll re-sew these here sections back into the book. We'll put the covers back on, and then we'll take, and this is not leather, but I'll probably take a piece of green leather and bring up over here like this here, and bring it around the back. You can see this tape here and so forth, and they put this here duct tape on now, and when they put the duct tape on, I tell you what, that's like, and if I can, I'll lift this here up. The only trouble is I've got this here sad looking stuff here that I hate to, you know, leave showing. It'll be an iffy proposition.
Those big family Bibles are a lot of work. I mean, they really are. Time consuming, but like I say, when we get done with them, they are in very, very good. It's like a piece of old furniture that is now restored and you can display it in your house. You don't find shops anymore in these days like this. You know, you get to work with your hands and your machines, and you're not doing one thing all the time, every day. You get to kind of create and make something for somebody, and at the end of the day, you know they're going to be happy with it. At least 99% of the people. Well, at one time, we was a union shop, and we had about 15 to 16 people. It's just been me and my dad ever since. Well, my dad started in '59, and the year I was born, and they said I was destined to do this.
One day at summer camp, I was in the National Guard. One day at summer camp, my wife called me and said, Bob over back in North Call wants to know if you want to go to work for him over there. Mr. Beck died. You know, would you want a job? And I said, well, you know, and in the union, they always say, if you want to really be a bookbinder, work at Beck and Orr. So I said, okay. So I went there in '59 and never knew it was going to last this long. I guess it's in my blood and I didn't know it.
Well, we got a couple cutting machine that is probably from the 1930s. The way they were built back then, they stand the test of time. It's a unique business, and it's just fantastic working with my dad.
To learn more, visit beckandorr.com. And that does it for another episode of Arts Insight. Thanks to Box 13 Art Space for hosting us this week, and thanks to you for watching. For all of us here at Houston Public Media, I'm Ernie Manous. Have a great week.